Live from Washington, I'm Aisha Tanzim and you're watching Access Point. Hello and welcome. Unlike many countries, lobbying the American Congress for your cause is legal. What does that mean? It means that it's legal to hire a well-connected lobbyist to push for your cause in Congress. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and those who know how to do it well reap their rewards in terms of better regulations for their industry or better relations with their country. So what is Pakistan or the Pakistani diaspora doing to lobby for their cause? Let's find out from our guests. Joining me in the studio is Ashraf Qazi, who's the chairman of the Council on Pakistan Relations. He lobbies for the Pakistani American community on Capitol Hill. Welcome to Access Point.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Aisha.
And I need to point out that our other guest who will join us in our New York studios is stuck in Manhattan traffic. So hopefully Dr. Nasser Qureshi will join us soon. I'll introduce him as soon as he joins us. But Mr. Qazi, tell me, legally in America, what can a lobbyist do and what is considered illegal or unethical to do?
Sure. First of all, let me just make a very small clarification. Council on Pakistan Relations is primarily an advocacy group. Now, sometimes it's sort of used interchangeable, lobbying and advocacy, but there is a difference. And primarily, lobbying is when you can actually, through your political action committee, you can actually give money to a politician to really sort of make a case for your cause. It doesn't mean that you go out there and you say, okay, I'm going to give you this money and I want you to do this in return. It just doesn't work that way. But to make a broader point, like what you said early on, lobbying and advocacy is really part and parcel of the American politics.
As I said, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And interestingly, not just American companies or American groups can lobby, foreign governments can lobby. Many countries have hired big lobbying firms in Washington. Israel does it, India does it, Pakistan does it.
Absolutely.
So tell me something, why is lobbying in Washington worth the millions and sometimes billions of dollars spent on it?
Sure. Well, it's certainly an industry unto itself. The lobbying, that goes on in Washington, D.C. And I think it's a big part of American political life. And you're right, there are countries, they lobby for their issues and their, partly it has to do with the fact that, in Congress you've got, 435 members in the House, 100 on the Senate, and they all have jurisdictions over different committees and so forth. So whether you're a corporation or a country, in order to protect your interest or to make a case for whatever you want and whatever you think is right, that is really the way to do it.
Does it pay off?
To some, there are no guarantees, but I think it invariably, I think if you have any interest and if you're part of an interest group, whatever that may be, you really don't have much of a choice, to be very honest with you.
So basically, help me understand, what you're doing is you're trying to convince congressmen or senators that this is the way to do things or this is the way to look at things.
Yes.
And tell me, when it comes to foreign relations, do you think it makes an impact?
It absolutely does. I think if you're not there, you're not making a case for yourself. In case of Pakistan, yes, the reality is bad and the image is even worse. But on the other hand, there is another narrative, another perspective that is absolutely entirely missing, where there is a case to be made for Pakistan, all the suffering that has gone on there, and the price that Pakistan has paid to be an ally of the United States. It has paid a very heavy price. But there's really no one making a case for that, unfortunately. So we're a small organization, but we do what we can. And our members and our board members and community members, they interact with congressmen and their senators. And this is what we call advocacy, really issue-based or whatever you believe in.
Have you ever seen somebody change their mind based on your input or input of groups like yours?
Well, certainly there are big examples of where lobbying or advocacy really pays off. Of course, everyone always uses as a gold standard, something called AIPAC that represents, really a viewpoint.
The Israeli-American.
Absolutely, the Jewish American.
The Jewish American.
Yeah, the Jewish American community. And they've done a tremendous job issue-based advocacy, and I don't think anyone denies the outcome and the payoff that they have had. So people invest their time and their money in the cause that they believe in. It could be, whatever. It could be civil rights. It could be anything. It could be a country. It could be on a specific issue.
You mentioned APAC. Indian lobbyists are also very successful in
Absolutely.
Washington. And during the nuclear deal, India spent a lot of money lobbying in Washington. Right. What are they doing right?
I think there's certainly what they're doing right. Of course, they've got a lot going on for them in terms of India in itself doing very well economically, where Pakistan has really, really lagged. And then India is, I think, it's been spared all the spillover from Afghanistan. Pakistan is it's been a troubled place, but I think what works well with them, their advocacy group or their lobbying group, the Indian American diaspora, I believe they work very closely with the government of India. So it is issue based. So for example, they wanted a nuclear deal. That's what the government of India wanted. So then they collaborated with the Indian American community here, the diaspora community, the corporate America world, because they have an interest in India. So you have to really create an echo chamber. For example, right now we know that the government of Pakistan certainly would like something along a trade preferential agreement, and in the context that very recently the European Union gave Pakistan a preferential trade agreement. Now the question is, why not U.S.? And now there have been efforts in the past, but there's a greater need for the embassy and for the diaspora to work on issues that are of common interest.
And I'm going to expand more on that. You mentioned India does well organizing and coordinating efforts. How do you see Pakistani diaspora and Pakistani government and Pakistani lobbying firms on that score?
Very good question. I think we have a lot of work to do on all ends that you mentioned. The Pakistani government needs to get their act together. And on that note, I'm very encouraged, actually. We just recently met the new ambassador from Pakistan, Ambassador Jalani. Now, we make it very clear that we are Americans of Pakistani descent. Our first and foremost priority is interest of the United States. So we're not going to be advocating for anything that is not good for U.S. So on issue of trade,
that makes your position kind of stronger on the Hill rather than weaker.
Absolutely.
If you put, just like APNA, Dr. Nasser Qureshi of APNA will join us, Americans of Pakistani descent, not Pakistani Americans. They chose their name very carefully.
Either way, so, but the bottom line is we're not the spokespeople or spokespersons for government of Pakistan or the embassy of Pakistan. We're very interested in working with them on issues that we agree on and respectfully tell them some things that we may not agree on. But what we were encouraged by is that Ambassador Jalani, he's made it very clear that his top priority is trade. So we're very excited about that. On the diaspora side, we've not done a good job as a community for a number of reasons. To really come together as a group, to pool our resources. There's really a desperate need for that. Our community is blessed. We have tremendous relationships throughout the country. A lot of people know their congressmen, their senators. They've been to their house. They've had, wonderful meals, and they've been supporting them, writing them checks. But beyond that, there's really nothing that they ask of them in return, at least to, bring up an issue or two. So we're hoping that right now we're very focused on really, and we're energized to really focus on trade and really give our community talking points.
There are two things you mentioned that I want you to talk about more. You mentioned earlier something about issue-based. Explain exactly what you mean by issue-based and how is it different from just generally talking about the interest of something?
Sure. Take trade for an example. If Pakistan wants a preferred trade agreement, which we know that would be tremendous for Pakistan, it'll increase its exports to U.S. and so forth tremendously. Create tons of good jobs in Pakistan. Well, you have to make a case for it. Why trade? Because here it's not an issue that, it certainly has its own dynamics. Because there's labor unions here, and they're not going to be excited about giving Pakistan or any other country any preferential trade agreement. So that's where
the textile industry versus the cotton farmers in U.S.
Exactly. So that's where you really have to focus on a committee that deals with trade. And then you go and make a case for Pakistan. whether it's the government of Pakistan or the diaspora community. And what could be more wonderful than that, that they're working together and they're saying, look, this is in U.S.'s interest. This is a tool that the United States has not used to really promote economic activity. Now, there's been talks and there's been sort of lines like
trade, not aid.
Trade, not aid. You know, Secretary Clinton said that, and so many other people have said it. But what's next? Let's make it happen. Let's do it. That requires a persistent, a consistent message and effort.
And if we get down into it, a congressman is really not interested in the broader good of the country. At some level he is, but he's also more interested in what's good for his constituency.
Absolutely. So, first and foremost.
Exactly. He needs to win re-election. Right. So you have to go congressman by congressman, senator by senator, and explain to them how this helps them. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You're right. And that's where those personal relationships come very handy, because you have that access at a local level. And you're right, politicians, they certainly know what's on their list. They want votes, they want money. So what they want is very clear. What we need to understand is what is it that we want out of them. We want them to understand our issues, whether it's like the J-1 visa issues or any other issues that affect our community. And I know that APNA is really working on some of those issues. So that's where, but there's a desperate need for us to come together on issues and support each other and pool our resources. And that's what other diaspora communities have been able to do. And just about any country that is like anything around the world, their diaspora community here is very active, believe it or not, in Washington, D.C. They work on issues because it's natural. It's your homeland. It's a country that you very much love, and you want to do something.
Okay, let me introduce our other guest who got out of Manhattan traffic, and he's finally joined us. Dr. Nasser Qureshi is the former secretary of APNA. He's also a very active member of APNA and is active in lobbying efforts. Dr. Qureshi, welcome to Access Point.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tanzim, and Assalamu alaikum, Ashraf. It's a pleasure seeing you.
Good to see you as well.
Dr. Qureshi, tell me something. APNA does not lobby on political issues, but it is considered to be one of the most organized and one of the most effective lobbying group that's of Pakistani descent. What issues are important to APNA?
If you look at APNA's lobbying efforts, obviously APNA is a non-for-profit organization. So as an organization, it cannot participate in any political lobbying. However, it has played tremendous amount of role in getting issues which are directed towards the physician and Pakistani community in U.S. in the forefront in Washington, and has had reasonable success, I would say, or at some points great success. But if you take it off of the organizational structure, the APNA physicians in their own personal capacity do play a tremendous role in the political corridors of Washington or in their own local states. Do remember that APNA is probably the only organization, or is the organization, which have very well organized chapters in about 30 states. In those states, the politicians, the senators, the congressmen, the local congressmen for the state, the governors, the mayors, they all come and participate in APNA functions. So there is a direct interaction at a tremendous level across the country with Pakistani physicians who actually portray a different image of Pakistan than what you generally get from media or otherwise. And when these people, after having interacted with Pakistani physicians, go back to Washington, they have a very softened mindset. They're open to looking at Pakistan as a very viable country, and have in their mind the positive effect that the Pakistani physicians are having in their own larger communities, not just the Pakistani community, but the larger community in their
Dr. Qureshi,
neighborhoods.
Help me understand something, and I was asking this of Mr. Kasi as well. How important is it for a country, be it Pakistan, India, Israel, or any other, to have a coordinated approach that the government and the diaspora and any other groups talk with one voice and also about the same issue?
It is extremely important to do that, and one of the successes of Apna, or some of the efforts
okay,
which
hold on. I don't
Ashraf
hear you.
is doing.
Let me, I don't hear you at all. So maybe something's happened with your mic. We'll come right back to you.
Sure.
Dr. Qazi, we've already talked about it. So let's talk about why hasn't Pakistani diaspora been successful so far in delivering something tangible for Pakistan?
I think, you know, part of it has been because there have been a number of organizations and very well-intentioned folks started initiatives and started the caucus in the House and this and that, but they were unfortunately not well-funded. And so it kind of, their efforts fizzle after a while. So now there's a realization that, you know, and as a matter of fact, on a very positive note, there was another organization other than CPR. They had been active for more than 10 years called PELSI. And Sadiq Chagtai Saab, who's been leading that organization for a number of years and had staff here and all that, but realized that we've got to work together. So recently, CPR and PELSI, we've really sort of quote unquote merged, basically merge our interest. And, you know, so like tomorrow we have our board meeting, and so we're very excited that this is a great beginning. And hopefully we can expand on that. And like my good friend, Dr. Qureshi talked about Apna with tremendous, I think, tremendous potential to do a lot of good.
Let's see if we can hear him now. Dr. Qureshi, I hope you can hear us loud and clear, and I hope we can hear you. Why do you think the Pakistani diaspora has been unsuccessful in delivering tangible results on many issues?
Can you hear me now, Aisha?
I can,
yes,
I can,
hear
yes.
you.
Okay. So we have to understand a natural evolution of a community. Pakistani community was a small community 30 years back. It has gained strength. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So as the Pakistani community has gained strength, both socially and financially and economically in the country, Ashraf is absolutely correct. Now is the time that we have to come together on united platforms and have a united voice over issues which are tangible and issues which we can get someone to hear and move on. Unfortunately, if a lot of other communities have it, and in the past the Pakistani community had too many splinter organizations, each one asking for something different. As a result, there was no combined effort. So I think that the combination or union which Dr. Qazi has just mentioned with PALSI is one of the most positive signs in political efforts of Pakistani community here. Because in as much as all of these organizations can come together, the organizations which actually are free to have a political voice, the more they come together under a single banner, the better the efforts of Pakistani community are going to be.
Dr. Qureshi, tell me something. As a Pakistani physician who's very active in the US, do you often get approached by the Pakistani embassy, for example? Do you think that there's at least an effort at coordination?
Yes, I think individual physicians, especially those in DC, get approached and they work very actively with Pakistani embassy. Please remember that at this point we have two mayors, one of them in Connecticut, which was just recently elected, who is a Pakistani physician and has worked very, very actively with the Pakistani embassy in his individual capacity and with the politicians. This is being replicated across the country, and definitely over the years with the change of administration, every new embassy staff or the ambassador that has come in has kept in close contact with these organizations. I think that's my experience. I believe Ashraf would have had the same experience.
What are some of the issues on which Apna has had success? I mean, I know from going to some of your past meetings that bringing Pakistani doctors to US and helping them was something important for Apna. How much success have you guys had in that issue?
So the first major success, which was for all foreign medical graduates, which was spearheaded by Apna some years back, was ensuring that foreign medical graduates take the same examination as the American medical graduates when they apply for residencies. And that was a tremendous achievement. APNA now also has been able to procure a seat in American Medical Association. We are represented in the ECFMG. So essentially, as far as a physician organization protecting the rights of physicians of Pakistani origin who are coming here for training, APNA has had great success. The major issue after 9/11 was the homeland security, that our young physicians were getting residencies and training slots here but would not get the visa. Over the years, there has been a tremendous amount of effort by several people to the point that this year there were 52 Pakistani graduates who got residencies, and all of them got a visa in time, and that has only happened by sustained effort year after year, having communication and relationships with the right people in Washington.
Okay, now, Mr. Qureshi, tomorrow we have a delegation from Pakistan coming here that includes the defense minister, that includes the PM's minister, PM's advisor on finance. Do you think advocacy or lobbying ahead of time can make these trips more productive? Can they get meetings, for example, that otherwise they would not have?
I mean, absolutely, doing your homework and, you know, helps tremendously no matter what you're trying to accomplish. So, but that's for the Pakistani community, the Pakistani government to, you know, to do their work, and I hope that they are. But just to go back to Dr. Qureshi's point, this issue of, you know, J1 visas, there were significant delays. A lot of people were facing hardships, not getting their residencies. This is one good example of where APNA and our organization, we worked together, and we pooled our resources. So we were talking about the same talk, going to the State Department, going to our congressional folks, writing them letters, saying, look, this is important not for Pakistan, but this is important for the United States, because these are the physicians who work in rural areas and underserved areas. So I feel very good about it, what he pointed out, that these are the small examples of where we can come together and show some success. Hopefully we can do it on larger issues as well.
I'm wondering if either of you gentlemen have any idea how many lobbying companies the government of Pakistan has in Washington. Do you know that, Mr. Qureshi?
You mean Ashraf?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Qazi.
Mr. Qazi.
Yeah. You know, that is really a question for government of Pakistan, but in the past they've had one or two, and I'm sure that, you know, they will have somebody representing them, and we wish them well.
Dr. Qureshi, do you think the Pakistani government does a good job of lobbying on the Hill?
I would actually refrain from answering that question, because their efforts are in a different sphere. And a lot of those efforts myself, or maybe even Dr. Qazi, may not be aware of. So to be able to judge that, it is very difficult. What I can say is that Pakistan has had and has a very, very strong delegation at the United Nations. The consulates and the consul generals and the embassy in DC have always had very prominent ambassadors and staff. And I believe that they've done a good job considering the situation and the conditions that they are handed.
Talk about the situation and the conditions. Pakistan, even though its relationship with the US is getting better, and 2013 was better than 2012, Pakistan went through a really bad patch, especially around the time when Raymond Davis was arrested in Lahore, and when Osama bin Laden was killed in Abbottabad. What was that time like for a group like yours when you were going out on the Hill and trying to interact with congressmen, representing a country that...
Right. It was a difficult time, but we didn't sit at home. We went and talked, and we talked, and we went, you know, every time we went on the Hill, we would visit 10 offices in a day, really sort of giving them a balanced sort of view, and not only listen to what they hear on Fox News or whatever, and, you know, and because it was hurtful to be sort of painted by a broad brush. You know, so being a Pakistani
did you feel that your access to congressmen or senators ebbs and flows depending upon how Pakistan's painted in the news?
Certainly, it has an impact as far as how, what you would call the listening ears. Yeah, the relationship has been very rocky, and thank God that things are somewhat quiet right now. And so just for us, and I think for government of Pakistan, frankly, regardless of who the ambassador was, this was a very challenging relationship and a very challenging place to be. So it wasn't easy for anyone. And but certainly, we didn't represent the government of Pakistan. We went there as individual private citizens saying, okay, you know what? Yes, Pakistan has a lot of faults. They need to get their house in order. But don't forget that there is another story to it. Pakistan is faced with a lot of challenges, internal and external. Is there a way, because no one in Washington, D.C. disagrees, that a stable, a little more democratic, and a prosperous Pakistan is not only good for Pakistanis, it is good for the world.
Dr. Qureshi, what are some of the issues that you feel that if the Pakistani embassy and the diaspora work together, they'll be easier to push through U.S. Congress? You can actually deliver on them rather than the bigger foreign policy challenges.
I would like to just, before I answer this question, address something which Ashraf just said and what you were asking, the strength of APNA. You see, politics is always local. And the strength of APNA is the 30 chapters that it has across the country, and through Raymond Davis and through 9/11. Our local connections with the local senators and congressmen did not wane away. They have their point to tell us, and we have our story to tell us in a non-pressured environment. So actually the APNA physicians in their private capacities, or even on an organizational level, were able to maintain those relationships on a prolonged basis. And obviously they have a story to tell, but much more importantly, locally they find the Pakistani community, especially the physician community, extremely important for their elections and for their support. So that is where the strength of APNA has lied. Their work has not happened in Washington, but has happened in a lot of states and in a lot of cities. Now, when you talk about issues where APNA and the Pakistan embassy can work, APNA as an organization can only give a platform for senators and congressmen, which they always do come in their local functions and their national functions. We have been very, very lucky and successful in having a lot of people come in and speak to us, people who have chaired key committees in Congress. They have been our speakers. The issues that we can directly go hand in hand with the Pakistani embassy are professional issues, are issues which may be related to improvement of healthcare and healthcare delivery in Pakistan, issues that are related to economic welfare of the population there. Much more importantly, image building is what Pakistani embassy should be looking towards at APNA. Now, if you were to ask, can we work with Pakistani embassy on an issue like drones or narrow supply lines? No, APNA as an organization cannot do that, but it can definitely provide a solid ground for other issues which are like healthcare.
Healthcare, immigration issues, as you said,
right.
Issues that the Pakistani diaspora, APNA is a non-profit, I understand, but Pakistani diaspora, what can they deliver with the help of the embassy all speaking with one voice?
I think probably in terms of issues, we are probably better off focusing on issues that are not as controversial.
Low-hanging fruit. It's always better to go after the low-hanging fruit.
And there can be some very tangible, meaningful outcomes. For example, Dr. Qureshi is talking about healthcare. Well, we all know that, every year about $1 billion is going to Pakistan.
Healthcare, student visas,
but
making life easier for people who come here. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you because our time is up, and I really want to thank both our guests before we leave. Mr. Ashraf Qazi is the chairman of the Council on Pakistan Relations, and Dr. Nasser Qureshi is a former secretary at APNA, also a very active member even now. And thank you for watching us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please join us again next week for another episode of Access Point.